So in early 2023, at this point, the late Queen had died just a few months earlier. Harry and Meghan's Netflix series had come out. Harry had released his book. The couple had fired all their big shots, and we were basically waiting to see how it would all land. And it was around this time that public perception really seemed to shift.
It's almost as if they have hit their tipping point. It's an overshare, it's too much. And we're looking at a man complaining about titles and tiaras. It's really hard to digest.
So things started happening like, it seemed lighthearted, but late night TV hosts were ribbing the couple in a way that they probably wouldn't have before.
He grabbed me by the collar, ripping my necklace.
That South Park episode came out where, a couple that looked a lot like Harry and Meghan were out there on their worldwide privacy tour. And the big problem with that is that the whole privacy thing echoed what the UK press had been accusing them of, which was hypocrisy when it came to their own privacy. And suddenly this was a call coming from within the house because this was Hollywood, this is in the US, which is traditionally a lot more supportive of Harry and Meghan. And there they were basically echoing that same criticism.
America was quite sympathetic to them as a couple. They'd sort of bought a lot of Meghan's narrative that was presented in the Oprah interview. I think there was a lot of sympathy towards Harry post-Spare as well, particularly in America, where they felt really quite sorry for him. But I think there was a sense that public opinion and that public sympathy and support for Harry and Meghan was changing.
It really felt like around that time that the floodgates had been opened and that Harry and Meghan were a little bit more susceptible to this kind of criticism than they ever had been before, especially in the US. So one of Harry and Meghan's biggest deals was the Spotify deal. And Meghan, of course, released the Archetypes podcast, which was a 12-episode series. Less than a year after that, this deal spectacularly fell apart. At first, it was just a mutual statement saying that they had parted ways, and it seemed very amicable between Spotify and Harry and Meghan. But very quickly after that, the narrative changed. All of a sudden, there were sources from within Spotify's camp leaking stories that there was a perception that Harry and Meghan were lazy. They hadn't delivered on what they'd promised. But the crushing blow came when one of Spotify's executives said on the record that they were effing grifters, and then threatened in a joking way to release the story about the pictures that Harry was putting forward, basically making a complete mockery of what they were suggesting they would produce. It was that first really big chink in the very premium brand that we'd seen for Harry and Meghan, because the deal has not worked out. They were not able to deliver, it seemed, on what they'd promised. And also, suddenly people were laughing at their content ideas.
To describe them as grifters, was pretty devastating. I think the point is that it doesn't matter if you are a member of the royal family or not. It might get you a meeting with Netflix and Spotify. In fact, it certainly will, and it'll probably get you a pretty lucrative deal. But the proof is in the pudding. If you're not delivering brilliant content, you're not going to be recommissioned.
In late 2024, we then got the Hollywood Reporter article, which was hugely damaging because it really skewered Harry and Meghan in a way that they had never before. And Hollywood is Meghan's turf. This is where she started her career. This is where she was the most popular. And suddenly they were reporting on things that had been reported in the UK press years earlier, alleging that staff were having a miserable time basically working for Harry and Meghan. And that is what had been said years earlier when they were working with palace staff. And this was hugely damaging for Harry and Meghan because these are two camps on different sides of the world who have no common interests really, but they're saying things that are very similar.
When they were in the UK, they had a reputation for being very difficult bosses. There were a lot of staff left when they were working at the palace, and there was allegations that Meghan had bullied them. There was a bullying report ultimately set up and she was investigated. At the time, many people thought that people at the palace, maybe they just couldn't, deal with Meghan because she was such a strong personality. They'd never dealt with such an independent woman like Meghan Markle. And there may have been a case. There may have been a case that maybe the palace just wasn't prepared for someone like Meghan. However, in America, they've had the same problem, the same allegations, the same complaints. I've lost count of the amount of stories that have found their way into the US press which was usually quite favourable to Harry and Meghan, where we've heard the same allegations that Meghan has been Duchess difficult, that she's been, a tyrant in high heels, that Harry is just an enabler. These were allegations from people that had worked with them or had been in organisations that had been put in rooms and put in conferences and dealt with deals with them. These were people that had been working in some of the biggest media organisations in the USA, and they lost a lot of staff. We're talking 15, 20 good, qualified people that took a couple of weeks, couple of months in most cases, had one look at Meghan, looked at the way they were treating it, and they disappeared.
Fast forward just a couple of months and came the real killer blow. Vanity Fair released a thousands and thousands of word article about Harry and Meghan, and again it touched on their difficulties with staff. There were some really, really damning allegations in there about staff having to quit, but not only that, having to go to therapy after working with Meghan. And of course the whole way through, Meghan has denied these allegations of bullying in the workplace, but once again it's the same allegations being aired by a different group of people. And all in all, it just is that overall look of their brand sort of in freefall when it came to their reputation.
The Vanity Fair cover story was very telling about where the cultural reference point in America gauged Meghan and Harry, and that had shifted from quietly supportive, watching patiently from the sidelines, to doing this deep dive into their lives in Montecito, speaking to the people who had worked with them, and presenting a less than positive picture of this couple who clearly set their ambitions on becoming, A-list Hollywood celebrity stroke royals, but were not punching where they should be. I mean, significantly falling short. They sort of came across as being less than successful in their commercial ventures. Certainly when it came to Archwell and their philanthropic work, that hadn't sort of met perhaps the expectations that we'd had of them, and a slight sort of resentment amongst the residents of Montecito that they brought attention to this quiet little enclave for the wrong reasons as well.
In that Vanity Fair piece, they also spoke to people who had been in those meeting rooms with Harry and Meghan when they were pitching ideas about what to produce across their audio and their Netflix deal. And they were making fun of them in a lot of it. They were pointing out that their ideas weren't great.
Now, some of the ideas they had simply were farcical. He had no idea what he was talking about. I mean, he came up with, in an ideas meeting, and said, wouldn't it be good to get Putin to talk about his childhood? I mean, farcical suggestions. So I think that they just weren't very experienced. And the British media were pretty hostile straight away, but the American media took a good year, 2 years, to sort of start making their own mind up. And when they did, they've been pretty damning of Meghan and Harry. They see them, I think after the grifter comment, they started to be seen as sort of C-list celebrities. So I think it just shows the narrative has shifted in a country where, money talks. And if you don't deliver what you wanted, you're soon downgraded, and they've been downgraded.